What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel and podcast network. I'm Noah Hiles. He is Andrew Destin. This show, as always, is brought to you by the North Shore Tavern. If you love baseball, you'll love the North Shore Tavern. The interior's wall-to-wall Pirates. There are appetizers, entrees, cocktails, and, of course, steak and seafood on a sizzling lava stone, open every day. The North Shore Tavern is across from PNC Park and is Pittsburgh's home for steak on a stone. Andrew, the Pirates wrap up a 3-game set against the San Francisco Giants, a series that, quite frankly, they probably should have swept, or at the very least taken 2 out of 3. Instead, the Giants leave town with back-to-back wins. The Pirates led by 5 games Wednesday night, or 5 runs. My goodness, all this bad baseball has broken my brain. Pirates led by 5 runs Wednesday night. The Pirates they lose that lead. The Giants come back and win by 4 runs in extra innings. The Pirates lead by 4 runs Thursday afternoon. Pirates blow that lead. Giants come back and win 7-6. Just your overall takeaway before we get into this series as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places to go. I would just say that squandered opportunities. And I think you can extrapolate that really to the season at large. I know you and I had this conversation about there's probably a handful, half dozen games the Pirates have left on the table. And when you look at a team that's 5 games under 500, they just as easily could be 5 games over. That's not me being the eternal optimist. It's to say they've blown a lot of games that they should win. Not that they deserve to win them, but this was just a classic case of at least 2 games that you left on the table. And there's nothing more to it really than that.
We're going to step away from our good, bad, and ugly format, and instead we're just going to give 3 observations each. And we'll go back and forth. I'll start with a good one, because I think one good thing that we saw in this series, and it's the second straight series where we've seen it, I believe, is 2 back-to-back really good starts from Jared Jones and Paul Skenes. Back-to-back, quality starts.
Yep.
Neither of them had their best stuff in these outings on Wednesday or Thursday, Andrew. But the fact is that these guys still found a way to get outs. They pitched well with runners on base. 4 earned runs combined in 12 innings total. Just really good stuff from this 1-2 punch that the Pirates are going to have for quite some time. But, the bigger problem is what takes place after they leave the ball game. But just anything you want to say on Jones and Skenes.
Yeah, I mean, second straight turn through the rotation, both quality starts. And it was kind of a similar dynamic as the first 2, where Jones, the 6 innings, 3 runs. And then, obviously Skenes has a little bit better of a showing just in terms of the on-field results. But both really impressive. Nothing really more to add to it than that, except that this kind of ties into the greater theme of the series is just that the bullpen not being great. And in particular, I want to highlight Aroldis Chapman. When you look at it strictly financially speaking, this is the highest paid player on the Pirates this year at $10.5 million. Yep. This is money that general manager Ben Cherington could have allocated into different ways, but I understood it to a degree at the beginning of the season of, hey, the bullpen they perceive to be a strength. They want to bolster it. This is a guy who can help out in that regard. He has not. 12 straight balls in Wednesday's game that the Pirates ended up losing with walking the bases loaded. And then on Thursday comes in and gives up the game-winning hit to Brett Wisely on an 0-2 fastball that was right down the middle. So when you look at those two things, the bullpen, not great, a 5.86 ERA, I believe it is, in the month of May, and Aroldis Chapman in particular, just hasn't been great all season, hasn't been consistent for a bullpen that could really use for him to be just that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to go into further detail with my second observation. I mean, you just pointed out Chapman. It's more than Chapman, though. I mean, right now, it's May 23rd. How many guys in the bullpen do you feel comfortable with when they come in that they will not allow a run right now? I can name maybe 1.5. I think Colin Holderman is the easy answer, right?
Yep.
I would also say Luis Ortiz. The problem is when he's coming in, it's multiple innings. So it's more of an opportunity to allow a run. But, I mean, that's it. David Bednar, I mean, he was fine on Thursday, but the guy's blown a handful of saves already this year. His ERA is still very high. Aroldis Chapman is disappointed. I mean, Hunter Stratton's had stretches, but he has not been great. I mean, he was the losing pitcher today. You could go down the list. Majinski was supposed to be, a guy that had promise coming off of a really strong rookie campaign. He's not been good. I mean, Kyle Nicholas. I mean,
Yeah.
I still think fans have, trauma from what happened
Sure.
in Paul's first start. It's just been bad all around. The management of the bullpen has been bad. The way they've gone, with the 6-man rotation back to this with a limited bullpen earlier in the series by bringing up Bay and sending down another pitcher and just not getting guys to just do what they need, which is go in and throw a clean 1-2-3 frame, and it's making everyone else's job incredibly harder. Andrew, that's been, I think, their biggest problem, not just this series, but this month, like you pointed out.
Yeah.
What's your second takeaway?
Yeah, for me, I mean, O'Neal Cruz defensively, anybody who watched these 2 games saw the couple of errors that he made, and I understand. I mean, the O'Neal Cruz this is just going to be how he's going to be defensively at shortstop, is he's going to make some wow plays, or he's going to throw a ball 100 miles an hour and gun somebody down on the base paths. He's done that multiple times this year. But he's also made a handful of errors, and after making 2 in this series, he's tied with Elly De La Cruz for the most in baseball. Those 2 both have 10. I understand. Errors are not everything. There's more to playing defensively sound baseball than just that. But the one error that particularly stands out to me is on Wednesday, where he fielded the ground ball up the middle and then threw a sidearm toss that he just didn't set his feet. It was a tough play regardless, but airmailed the throw. Wasn't particularly close. We're just seeing that. This is kind of just who he is defensively, and something that really stood out to me this series.
Yeah, and it's at a point now where, I mean, this is their shortstop for this season.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot move him to a different position mid-season, but I think it is something where you have to maybe have a conversation this offseason with O'Neal and just with as an organization about where do you play him moving forward. Maybe you don't want to waste the arm, right?
Sure.
That's the big thing. Like, at 6'7", it would be easy to just have him move over to first base. He's a guy who doesn't struggle terribly with fielding grounders, I would say. I mean, it's more the throwing errors. I mean, I guess that's wrong because he does have a lot of fielding errors, but nonetheless, as an infielder who's 6'7", I think the logical move would be putting him at first. But you don't want to waste the arm. So maybe do you move him to the outfield? That's a tough transition, and that's something that he's kind of been against earlier in his career. So
Sure.
I don't know what you do there. I wouldn't say it's as pressing of an issue as the bullpen, but it's like you said, that's something they're just going to have to live with. He's their shortstop this season.
Yeah.
Something that they chose not to live with before this game, Andrew, was Jack Suwinski getting sent down to Triple-A Indianapolis. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, for me, this was something that I know you and I both wrote about in our weekly mailbag, is that this was something that was probably overdue.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and we're never going to get this answer. You'd have to give Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton some truth serum, but I'm curious as to why it took this long. Defensively speaking, it's not like Jack was really providing you a whole lot. You had a million outfielders to work with. You called up G1 Bay earlier this week. This felt inevitable and finally happened, and ripping the Band-Aid off. I mean, he just never looked comfortable in the batter's box all season. The only time he really succeeded was hitting a handful of home runs. I believe he hit 4 on a couple of fastballs. Other than that, there really wasn't a whole lot to write home about. He wasn't taking as many pitches as he did last year. His on-base percentage was way down, and the strikeouts were up. The hard contact was fine at the beginning of the season, but then it really plummeted. This just felt inevitable.
Yeah, it did. And like you pointed out, I mean, with some guys who are struggling this year, Andrew, you'd look at the advanced numbers, the nerd stuff, as they say, and you would see, like, Andrew McCutchen, for example, the barrel rate, the exit velocity, things of that nature. You're like, okay, this is kind of an anomaly going on. It wasn't the case with Swinsky. I mean, the one thing that stood out to me was, okay, well, he's swinging hard consistently. But that doesn't mean anything if you're not at least making contact. Yeah. So I think that I will say, I think Jack can turn it around with a Triple-A stint a lot faster than maybe Henry Davis.
Sure.
I look at Hank as a guy that they want down there for extended time to really figure a lot of things out. I think Jack just needs 2 good weeks of baseball, and he might be okay.
Yeah.
I don't expect Jack Suwinski. I mean, and Shelton said after the game, I mean, this is a guy who's a big piece to the big picture, really. So they need him to get going, and it's a guy who's not going to ever hit 300 or maybe even 250, Andrew, but he's a guy that they need to be more consistent than what he is. And I think that a demotion will serve him well, or at least you would hope. On the note of demotions, we will round it up with our final observation. Andrew, is it time to part ways with Rowdy Tellez?
If you polled the fans, they'd certainly say as much.
Yeah.
I mean, to speak for all of you guys, but it was pretty vocal here at PNC Park on Thursday. I was recording this after the game. No, you've been to a lot more Pirates games than I have in my life. Have you ever seen a response like that from the public? Because that to me was pretty staggering.
It's tough. I mean, it's tough to watch. For you and I, I'm not going to act like we're best friends with Rowdy Tellez. We just met him in March and everything, but you see him around, and when you see these guys as people, it's tough to watch them struggle like this. It's brutal. But I mean, the guy looks lost up there, Andrew, and the fans have deserved it, or understandably had enough. I mean, it's been especially bad at PNC Park, what I've seen. I mean, he has 4 extra base hits this year. Only one of them has been at home. He's hitting well under 200, and any clip you want to look at it on the season in his last 7 games, last 15, last 30, it's just not happening here. And I think their decision to take him into this series hindered the bullpen by choosing to go with a limited bullpen to bring up G1 Bay and send down Ryder Ryan. You kept Rowdy Tellez on this team for these 3 games to let him bat, 4 times?
Yeah.
And he struck out twice. And those strikeouts were, and I don't mean to pick on the guy, but 2 of the more just jaw-dropping strikeouts I've seen this season.
Yeah.
One of them watching every single pitch thrown to him outside the zone, swinging at 2 of them, and then watching a meatball right down the middle with a runner on third. And then the other one coming up and just throwing his bat flipping after he thought he drew a walk, and it wasn't a walk, and struck out swinging the next pitch on ball 4. He just looks lost at the plate. He's pressing too much. I don't think this is something that's going to get fixed here at the major league level, especially with how little he has been playing over the last 10, 12 games. I think it's just time to part ways. There's an answer with Jake Lamb in Triple-A, and I'm not saying that Jake Lamb's going to come in and hit 20 home runs for this team, but what Rowdy Tellez is right now for this team, Andrew, is a backup player. He's playing once or twice a week, maybe a late inning sub, maybe a guy you can pinch hit. Jake Lamb can do that for you.
Sure.
He can be a left-handed bat off the bench. He can be a guy that you start against a righty once or twice a week. And he can probably do that more effective than Rowdy Tellez has done this season. And it's been an unfortunate thing. I mean, Tellez and Chapman were probably the 2 headliners and the guys they acquired this offseason. Maybe throw Michael A. Taylor in there, but neither of them have worked out. And I would say, objectively speaking, both have cost this team wins.
Yes.
And, we're getting to the point in the year now. I mean, June is a week away and that's when you really start to determine, are you a buyer or a seller? And thanks to the National League being fairly uncompetitive, this team's still not entirely out of the wild card conversation. But the Atlanta Braves are coming into town, Andrew.
Yeah.
And that's just a sentence that no team should be excited to hear, especially a team that is coming off of back-to-back absolutely gut-wrenching losses. What are you hoping to see from the Pirates in this Memorial Day weekend series against an absolute powerhouse in the NL East?
Well, it's kind of just that. I mean, I'm curious to see how the pitching stacks up, because you look at this Braves team, and it's no disservice to them, but they've got a few guys that have underperformed. You look at Matt Olson's stats. He's been a guy that's been hovering right around the Mendoza line. He statistically is a better hitter than that. So I think the fear there, if you're the Pirates, is these are some guys that are due. When you look at the Braves, that's probably not a sentence you want to hear if you're a Pirates fan, but I'm curious to see how the pitching stacks up, because as we mentioned, Skenes and Jones just threw. The Braves won't see either of them. Instead, it's going to be Falter, Keller, and Perez.
I mean, but at the same time, Falter and Keller have been incredibly hot.
Absolutely.
This month. So it'll be interesting to see how well they stack up. And you mentioned some guys on slumps. I mean, Ozuna is not on a slump.
No.
He is probably behind Ohtani as the hottest hitter in baseball right now. So they got their work cut out for him. It's going to be a challenge. Andrew will be heading to the beach. It'll just be me here this weekend covering it, and you can read all of our work because Andrew, he's a good coworker. He works ahead. He's got some features scheduled for the weekend. You can check out all of our work at post-gazette.com, and you can tune in to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel and podcast network for all of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette sports sections, analysis, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.